She knew it wasn't a routine audit before the plane landed. Adaeze Okonkwo was 31,000 feet above the Yellow Sea, 412 pages of Hansung Holdings, financial disclosure open on her laptop, when she found it. The thing that changed everything about what she thought she was flying into. Page 287. A footnote. 4 lines buried in the subsidiary annexure, like something that expected never to be read. A cross-reference to an infrastructure procurement account that had no corresponding project number, no vendor, no timeline. Just a number. And a sum. 340 million won. She read the footnote 3 times. Then she sat back and looked at the dark window of the plane. The Yellow Sea invisible below. Seoul somewhere ahead in the pre-dawn dark. And she understood. With the particular clarity of someone who had spent 15 years following money that other people wanted to stay hidden, that this footnote had been put on page 287 of a 412-page document because someone wanted it found. Not by a regulator, not by a court, by an auditor who would arrive, find it, flag it, write it up, and leave. She was the auditor. She was supposed to find this. She was supposed to stop here. The question that kept her awake for the remaining 2 hours of the flight, that she turned over and over in the recycled cabin air while Seoul approached beneath the clouds, was what they didn't want her to find instead. She opened a new document, typed 1 line. This is not a routine audit. Someone built a decoy and hired me to find it. Begin with what they didn't put on page 287. She looked at the line for a long moment. Then she closed the laptop, turned off her reading light, and sat in the dark with Seoul getting closer by the minute, thinking about traps and who built them and what they were really protecting. She didn't sleep. She planned. Incheon Airport at 6:09 a.m. was loud and bright and full of the churning noise of people in transit. Families, businessmen, a tour group assembling behind a yellow umbrella. She cleared passport control and the man fell into step behind her immediately. Not close. Professional surveillance never stayed close. He changed pace when she changed pace and stopped when she paused at the baggage carousel and held a phone to his ear that never once lit up with a call. She had been expecting something like this. She hadn't known exactly what shape it would take. She stopped walking. Completely. In the middle of the arrivals hall, carry-on behind her, document case in her left hand, surrounded by noise and movement. The man stopped too. 14 feet back, checked his dark phone. She turned around and looked directly at him. Their eyes met. He held it for 1 second, just long enough for her to map his face, his height, his jacket, the way he stood. Then he turned and disappeared into the crowd with the smooth, practiced ease of a man who had done this many times. She stood still. Her heart rate had climbed. She noted this the way she noted everything. As information, not as permission. She pulled out her phone, recorded a voice memo, time, location, physical description of the man, the 14 feet, the phone that never lit, sent it to her encrypted cloud folder. And then she opened her notebook and wrote, 6:14 a.m., active surveillance from passport control. Professional. Abandoned immediately when made. He wasn't here to stop me. He was here to confirm I arrived. She underlined the last sentence. They needed to know I was in the building, which means the building is the trap. She looked up at Incheon's bright arrivals hall, the families, the tour group, the ordinary morning noise of an airport that didn't know what she was walking into. Then she kept walking, because what she did with the knowledge that something was coming was prepare for it, and preparation required being exactly where the trap expected her to be. She filed the fear, picked up her pace. There was work to do. The man with her name card was waiting at the barrier. Not from Creston Meridian. She knew this from the absence of everything a Creston associate carried. This man was mid-40s, expensive in a way that lived in his posture rather than his suit. The kind of man who had never needed to explain himself to anyone and showed it without trying. Ms. Okonkwo, he said, the car is ready. I didn't file my arrival time with the client, she said. He smiled pleasantly, said nothing. The man who was following me from passport control, she said. Is he yours or theirs? The smile held for 1 beat too long. Then, the car is ready, Miss Okonkwo. She got in. She had 43 audits behind her and a rule she had never broken. You don't stop when it gets difficult. You adjust and you continue and you document everything. She documented the driver's face, the plate, the route, the time. Her phone buzzed. Marcus Webb, senior partner, Creston Meridian, London. Everything arranged at the Seoul end. Should be smooth. Client is cooperative. She stared at cooperative the way she stared at ledger entries that didn't balance. Then she put the phone away and opened her laptop, because files were the only honest thing in this car. And she went back to page 287 and the footnote that had been put there for her to find. She was going to find everything they didn't put there too. Hansung Tower in Gangnam was 62 floors of black glass that took the pale morning light and returned it darker than it arrived. The lobby at 6:50 a.m. was too quiet. Staffed correctly, positioned carefully, carrying the silence of people who had been told how to behave rather than arriving at it naturally. She noted it, the way she noted everything. Went to the 38th floor, a prepared office, glass walls on two sides, correct equipment, correctly arranged. On the desk, a white ceramic vase with 6 white orchids. She looked at the orchids for a moment, carried them to the credenza, turned them to face away. Then she pulled up the satellite view of the building and mapped every exit, found 3 cameras that didn't appear on the public fire safety plan, photographed the discrepancy, filed it. Only then did she open the first financial document. By 7:14 a.m., she was working. Park Seo-jin arrived at 7:31. 26, nervous in the way of someone hoping she wouldn't ask the right question. He listed her access. 18 months of records, 14 subsidiaries, no parent company, no archive, no board correspondence, 3 categories of restriction, 3 walls around whatever they were really protecting. She smiled at him. Thank you, Mr. Park. After he left, she wrote, this building knew I was coming before I told them. Surveillance at the airport, 3 restricted access categories. The footnote on page 287 was the door they left unlocked. She underlined the next line twice. My job is to find the room they locked. She went to work. The accounts were perfect. That was the problem. Forensic auditing was the art of reading what numbers told against their will. Hansung's numbers told her, within 2 hours, that they had been built by someone who understood what auditors looked for. Every imperfection of real commerce smoothed away. Every irregular pulse of actual business replaced with a rhythm so consistent it felt mechanical. Real money was never this tidy. This was constructed tidiness. Someone had studied auditors the way auditors studied accounts. She switched approach at 10:15 a.m. Stopped reading what was there. Started mapping the negative space. What should exist in a real company's records and didn't. The door opened at 10:52 a.m. A woman she hadn't seen, late 30s, tablet under her arm, one moving toward the desk with the practiced ease of someone who expected access. I'll just check the connection parameters, she said pleasantly. I'd prefer you didn't, Adaeze said, same register. My equipment is configured to my specification. The woman smiled. Left. Adaeze unplugged from the building's network immediately, switched to her personal mobile hotspot. Then she sat for a moment, hands flat on the desk, looking at the door, feeling the specific alert weight of being alone on the 38th floor of a building that was watching her more carefully than any building she had worked in before. She filed the feeling, not as fear, she couldn't afford fear yet, but as data, and she went back to the files. At 11:47 a.m., she found the Infrastructure Procurement Reserve account, 340 million won, 2 tranches, no corresponding project. A label designed to make no one curious enough to pull the thread. She photographed it. 4 copies, 4 devices, documented it with the precision of someone building for a courtroom. Then she kept going, because this was the decoy. This was what page 287 had been pointing her toward. She had known since 31,000 feet over the Yellow Sea that this was where they wanted her to stop. She didn't stop. At 1:30 p.m., she found Sungwon Asset Partners, a shell entity buried in a subdirectory of the 3rd subsidiary, a Cayman Islands registration number appearing nowhere else in any Hansung documentation. A single transfer, 2.1 billion won, 11 months ago. Origin unlisted. Destination untraceable. 2.1 billion won, approximately 1.2 million pounds sterling. She sat back. Her pen was in her hand. She noticed, with the detached precision she brought to self-monitoring in the field, that her grip on it was slightly too tight. She loosened it deliberately, finger by finger, and placed the pen flat on the desk. The 340 million won was a door left unlocked to keep her from looking for the window. And she had found the window. She wrote in smaller letters than usual. The reserve account was meant to be found. Sungwon AP, 2.1 billion won, is the real exposure. Someone built a decoy and hired an external auditor to legitimize finding it, which means the audit itself is part of something I don't understand yet. She underlined part of something I don't understand yet. At 2:30 p.m. Park Seo-jin appeared with a lunch tray. She looked up and for a moment, just a moment, she let herself feel the full weight of where she was. 38th floor. A building she couldn't legally leave. Firm that wasn't answering. A 2.1 billion won hidden account and a trap she had been hired to walk into and was now inside. She thought about her father, not as motivation, as weight. The specific gravity of watching a careful man trust the wrong thing, of being too young to stop it. Not today, she thought. Not mine. She looked at Park Seo-jin. Who authorized the engagement with Creston Meridian? A 2.1 second pause. The executive office. Which member? I'll find out, he said. Thank you, she said. Leave the food. She ate. All of it, mechanically, without tasting it. Functioning required fuel, and she was not going to let this building starve her focus out of her. Then she went back to Sungwon Asset Partners. She was still there at 3:47 p.m. when the door opened without a knock. And she finished her notation before she looked up, and Han Jae-won was standing in the doorway, and the room changed. She had built a picture of him from documents, signatures on quarterly reports, a name on board filings, the kind of presence that showed up in the way a company was structured rather than how it spoke about itself. The man in the doorway was taller than documents implied. The geometric tattoo climbing the left side of his neck was not what board filings prepared you for. And the stillness, not absence of motion, but absolute presence of control, was something no document could have told her. He looked at her desk, the angled screen, the two external drives, the color-coded tabs. He was reading her setup the way she read accounts, mapping it, drawing conclusions he wasn't yet sharing. She let him, finished her notation, capped her pen, looked up. Ms. Okonkwo, he said, precise English. No accent except the accent of someone who chose every word. I wanted to welcome you personally. Thank you, she said. The office is well equipped. He stepped inside, not all the way, just enough to change the room's geometry. She was aware, with the alert, specific awareness she brought to things that required it, of where he was relative to the door, to her desk, to her standalone device face down to her right. Creston has a strong reputation, he said. I hope to honor it, she said. The audit should be fairly straightforward, he said. Our internal review was recently completed. Most things look straightforward, she said, until you look closely enough. Something moved behind his eyes. Fast. Gone. He had very good control of his face. Built over years. Not performed. And almost nothing reached it without his permission. But something reached it then. His gaze moved briefly to her hands. Her left hand was flat on the desk over the corner of her reference notebook. A casual pose. Also the most efficient position from which to close it if someone moved toward it. He noticed. She saw him notice. Neither of them commented. How are you finding Seoul? He said. I haven't seen it, she said. I've been working. He looked at the untouched lunch tray. She had eaten later. Something crossed his face that was not professional. Something more ordinary. You should eat, he said. She hadn't expected plain from him. I'll get to it, she said. He held her gaze one beat longer than the conversation required. Then he left. She waited 30 seconds. Moved to the glass wall. Watched him in the corridor. Hands in his jacket pockets, already pulling out his phone. Dialing. 11 seconds. Phone away without looking at it. She went back to her desk. Opened her log. 15:47. Han Jae-won. Unannounced. Approximately 4 minutes. Read my desk. Noticed hand position relative to notebook. 11-second call after leaving. A status report, not a conversation. Pause. He is the most controlled person I have been in a room with in years. Not cold. Controlled. There is a difference. Another pause, then... She almost deleted this. He noticed I hadn't eaten. I don't know what to do with that. She left it. Closed the log. Went back to work. Morning. Day 2. 9:22 a.m. Choi Moon-ho arrived with coffee and a manila envelope and the patient composure of a man who had watched many problems resolve in his direction. She read the document. Both pages. 50 million won. Her signature. The audit closes compliant. The machine stops. She slid it back. Choi pushed. The termination clause. Her professional record. The implication that her firm might not hold. I want whatever recording exists of this conversation, she said, to reflect that I declined. Clearly. Without uncertainty. He left. She picked up her phone. Marcus. Voicemail. Office line. Voicemail. Compliance, 2 rings, disconnected. She put the phone down, opened her laptop. The screen went black. Cable connected. Battery had read 94% 12 minutes ago. She pressed the power button. Nothing. Held it for 10 seconds. Nothing. She sat with her hands flat on the desk. 11 minutes after the refused bribe, the IT liaison from yesterday, she had confirmed the laptop was briefly on the building's network. Briefly was enough. 1 breath. She picked up her standalone device, personal, encrypted, never connected to anything in this building, checked it, running, all files intact, 4 backups intact. They didn't know about the standalone device. She thought about her father, the weight of him in her chest. Not the memory, the weight. He had trusted the accounts he was shown and the contracts he signed, and at 54 years old had lost everything to a fraud she'd been too young to understand. She had spent 15 years learning to understand it so she could stop it for someone else. She looked at the black screen. They killed my laptop 11 minutes after I declined the bribe. I am the only person in this building who knows about Sungwon AP. She underlined it. Then her phone rang. A Seoul landline. She answered. A man's voice. English, accented, measured. The voice of someone reading from a prepared statement. Ms. Okonkwo, you are in a building that is a small part of a larger structure. The people who benefit from that structure are patient and well-resourced. We want you to complete your report. A limited report. The reserve account. Flag it. Recommend a modest penalty. Leave Seoul. Go home to your career. And if I don't, she said. A 4-second pause. She counted. Your certification review can be initiated by a third-party complaint to the IFA board. The complaint doesn't need to succeed. It needs to last 8 months. During those 8 months, your findings are suspended and your standing is under review. A pause. We're not asking you to be dishonest, Ms. Okonkwo. We're asking you to do less than everything. The line went dead. She sat still. The pen was in her hand. Her handwriting on the notes she'd taken during the call was slightly less even than usual. The letters not quite as regular, the spacing slightly wider. She looked at it, the evidence of her own hands under pressure. Then she photographed the page, attached it to her encrypted log, and then her phone rang again. This time the caller ID showed a name, Director Kwon B.S., Ministry of Infrastructure. She stared at the screen for 3 full seconds. Kwon Byung-soo was not supposed to know she existed. She was not in any public record connected to this engagement. He knew her name. He knew her number. He was calling her directly from his official line, not hiding, not through intermediaries. Calling her directly, which was either arrogance or a message. It was both. She answered, Okonkwo. Ms. Okonkwo. His English was accented and precise, the English of a powerful man who had learned it as a tool and used it accordingly. I understand you're conducting a thorough review of Han Sung's accounts. Silence on her end. She was writing. I want to extend a professional courtesy, he said. You are a long way from home. There are aspects of Han Sung's financial structure that exist within a broader context of government-private sector partnership. context that an external review might not have full visibility of. It would be unfortunate if incomplete visibility led to incomplete conclusions. I make every effort to ensure my conclusions are complete, she said. A pause. When he spoke again, the professional courtesy had thinned. Just slightly. Just enough. Ms. Okonkwo, he said, I have been managing this sector for 11 years. I have managed many situations, many auditors, many reports. A pause. I have never needed to manage the same one twice. He hung up. She held the phone. She had received threats many ways. Envelopes, emails, the studied pleasantness of men like Choi Moon-ho. She had never had a government official call her personal number in the middle of a working day and tell her, with complete composure, that she would not be a problem he needed to revisit. He was not a name in a document anymore. He was a voice, a presence, and the kind of man who called his own targets from his official line because he was confident enough not to need deniability. She wrote, 1504, direct call, Director Kwon Byung-soo, called from official line, veiled threat, never needed to manage the same one twice. He has reached beyond Han Sung. He is not hiding. She stopped, looked at the wall, then wrote, powerful men who are comfortable don't make calls like this. He is not comfortable. She underlined it. Her hand for the next 20 minutes was not entirely still, but it did not stop writing. She read the engagement contract for the third time at 7:30 p.m. Section 7, subsection C. 4 sentences. She knew them. Read them anyway. She could leave and lose everything. She didn't move. At 9 p.m., she took the elevator to the rooftop corridor. She needed air. 60 seconds of not looking at a screen, not calculating, not documenting the ways a powerful man had spent a day trying to stop her from doing her job. Seoul spread below in every direction. Towers of light. The Han River threading through the city dark and wide. The Namsan Tower glowing in the distance. It was the first time in 4 days she had looked at the city instead of through it. She stood at the rail and breathed. I didn't think anyone came up here. She turned. Han Jae-won, 15 feet away. Not his boardroom configuration. Dark jacket, collar open, and the geometric tattoo visible against the city's ambient glow. He looked for the first time like a man who had not planned this moment. Like a man who had come here for the same reason she had, to put down what he was carrying for 60 seconds. She was aware of him, specifically physically, in a way she had been carefully not being aware of. The sharp angle of his jaw against the city light. The way his hands, usually so deliberately still, were loose at his sides right now. Not managed, just there. She looked back at the city. I can go, she said. You don't have to, he said. He walked to the rail, far enough from her to be clearly not crowding her, close enough that she was aware of the warmth of another person in the cold air. And the silence between them lasted longer than silence usually lasted between people who barely knew each other. And it was not uncomfortable. It had the quality of two people reading in the same room. Kwon called me today, she said. He turned to look at her. A real look, not his managed one. Your personal number, he said. From his official line, she said. Not hiding. Something passed over his face, something she would have called fury in a less controlled man. In him it arrived and departed in under a second, leaving the surface unmarked but changed, the way water looked after something had moved through it. He came to my office 4 months ago, Jae-won said. In person. Sat across from me. A pause. When he is in a room with you, the air changes. She looked at his profile against the city light. He said it without drama, which made it more unsettling than drama would have. You're telling me this, so I'll be careful, she said. Not afraid. He turned to look at her. Yes, he said. Without hesitation, she held his gaze. In the city's ambient glow, his eyes were dark brown, not the black they appeared under fluorescent light. She had decided she was allowed to know the color of his eyes. Sungwon Asset Partners, she said. 2.1 billion won. He was very still. I found it yesterday, she said. I wanted to see if you'd tell me it existed. The silence lasted 7 seconds. How? He said, quietly. In the quiet, something that was not quite relief and not quite awe, but lived between them. You left the decoy too clean, she said. I followed the negative space. He looked at her fully. The controlled layers thinned. Something that had been kept at arm's length for 4 days arrived at the surface. Not shown, not performed, just there. Finish the audit, he said. All of it. Then I'll show you the rest. The rest, she said. It's bigger than Sungwon, he said. And bigger than me. She studied him. The city below. The cold air between them. Narrower than it had been when he first joined her at the rail. Neither of them had moved. Finish the audit, Adaeze, he said, her name in his mouth in the cold Seoul air. She looked at him. He was looking at the city, but she could see, in the set of his jaw, in the slight stillness of his breathing, that he was aware of exactly the same thing she was aware of. The narrowness of the cold air. He was managing it with the same deliberate restraint he managed everything. She looked back at the city too. He let the moment exist without naming it. I will, she said. Something in the line of his shoulders changed. Some fraction of the weight he'd carried for 4 months shifting position. She saw it because she had been, without planning to, paying close attention to how he carried things. They stood at the rail for another minute, the city below, the cold between them. Neither moving closer, neither moving away. When she went inside, she didn't look back. She went back to her office and started building the structure of the most important report she would ever write. Her hands were steady. Conference room B, 10 a.m., day 3. She laid it all out, both accounts, both trails, the bribe, the dead laptop, Kwan's call, the London number, the surveillance at Incheon. She walked him through it with the precision of someone building for permanence. He listened without interrupting. Complete unpartitioned attention. Taking everything in, returning nothing prematurely. When she finished, you found Sungwon before I confirmed it existed. Yes, she said. You didn't tell me that on the rooftop. I wanted to see if you'd confirm it, she said. He looked at her, and this time, for the first time across any table in any room in this building, he let what was in his face actually land. 2 seconds. Something between respect and something warmer than respect, arriving before he could decide whether to allow it. He permitted for exactly those 2 seconds before his expression settled. She held his gaze, did not look away, did not follow wherever the 2 seconds was trying to lead. Not yet. I'm going to show you everything, he said. After this, there's no going back for either of us. Show me, she said. He opened a folder, slid documents across one by one, with the same methodical deliberateness she used when building something meant to last. The first, Director Kwon Byung-soo. The second, an internal communication, 4 months old. A demand, explicit and deadlined, for 2.1 billion won, routed through Han Sung's subsidiary structure. Not an offer, a demand. With consequences written out so clearly that nothing needed reading between lines. The third document made her stop breathing. A list. 14 companies, all Seoul-based. Either all logistics or infrastructure. Beside each name, an amount, a date, a payment structure. Amounts ranging from 180 million won to 900 million won. Dates spanning 6 years. Total, nearly 7 billion won. She sat back. How did you get this? She said. A director I know, he said. One of the 14, documenting it for 2 years. He sent me this 4 months ago because Han Sung was the largest target and he needed someone with enough exposure, enough to lose, to be willing to surface it. He needed you to be the one who brought it down, she said. He needed someone who wouldn't be bought and was too visible to be quietly destroyed, he said. He thought that was me. She looked at him. Is it? The answer was 4 days of everything he'd done. She already knew it. You arranged this audit, she said. You requested Creston. You requested me specifically. I requested their most difficult auditor, he said. They sent your profile. The Lagos case. The Zurich engagement. A pause. You lost the retainer in Lagos. You filed anyway. Yes, she said. I knew, he said quietly, before you walked through the door, that you were the right person. He stopped. She looked at him. Didn't know what? His hands on the table had moved, both slightly an inch toward the center. She noticed. She had been noticing everything about his hands for 3 days. I didn't know, he said carefully. How right? The room was very quiet. Seoul drizzled against the glass. She was aware of him across the table, specifically, completely, in the way she had been managing carefully since the rooftop. The way his hands had moved. The way he'd stopped himself mid-sentence and chosen a careful version of what he'd been about to say, which meant there was an uncareful version sitting just behind his composure. She looked at the list of 14 companies. I'm going to write all of it, she said. Han Sung's payments with full coercive context, Kwon's operation, the 14 companies, the international shell structure, referral to every relevant regulatory body, and Interpol for the Cayman Trail. I know, he said. This puts Han Sung under scrutiny for years, she said. I know, he said. And it may cost you the company, she said. Yes, he said, with the steadiness of a man who had made a complete decision and was not going to undress it in front of anyone, not even her. She stood, gathered the documents carefully. He stood too, that automatic courtesy. As she was at the door when he said her name, she turned. He had crossed the room. Not quickly, nothing about him was quick, but with the deliberateness of a man following a decision through. He stopped in front of her, closer than any of their conversations had placed them, close enough that she could see the exact line of the tattoo at the base of his jaw, the dark brown of his eyes in the conference room light, the slight movement in his jaw of someone choosing words with particular care. There are 12 more companies in Seoul still paying Kwon's replacements, he said. They need someone. I know, she said. His hand moved, just slightly, just the beginning of a motion toward her arm, reaching for contact and then stopping, arrested in the air between them for exactly 1 second before he dropped it back to his side. 1 second. She felt it as clearly as if he had completed the gesture, the almost touch, the decision to pull back. She understood, looking at him, that it was not lack of wanting. It was something that understood this was not the time, and that there would be other times or there would not, and that she was leaving in the morning either way. She looked at him. Let him see that she had noticed. Let him see she wasn't going to pretend otherwise. One case at a time, she said quietly. He held her gaze. Then in a voice quieter than his usual register. Come back, Adaeze. When it's finished, come back and look at this city properly. She let the sentence exist in the space between them. Finish yours first, she said. Then we'll see. She walked out. She stood in the corridor for 1 moment longer than she needed to, her hand on the document case. Her heart rate elevated in a way that had nothing to do with Kwon or the threat or the dead laptop. She went back to her office. She had a report to write. She wrote through the night, both accounts, the full Sungwon AP trail, Kwon's documentation, the 14 companies, the 6-year timeline, the international shell structure, Cayman BVI Singapore, noted as requiring investigation beyond this engagement scope, the London consultancy, the call to her personal number. Kwon's direct call from his official line. She did not protect Han Sung. The payments were documented. The concealment was documented. The coercive context was documented with equal precision and marked clearly as mitigating, not exculpatory. She named Kwon Byung-soo, all of him, the demands, the payments, the system, the 11 years, the 14 companies, the 7 billion won. At 2:17 a.m., her phone buzzed. We know you didn't stop. Choices have consequences that outlast audits. She screenshotted it, attached it, kept writing. At 3:30 a.m., her phone rang. Marcus, the voice of a man who had not slept and had been arguing with himself for 2 hours. Adaeze, Han Sung's legal team is threatening a formal IFA complaint. Scope overreach. Your certification gets suspended pending review. 8 months. I know, she said. The board is split, he said. 2 partners want to settle, accept a limited report. Silence. Marcus, she said, you've been in this field 22 years. You became senior partner because you were good at it, not at managing it, at doing it. A pause. Be good at it one more time. A long silence. I'll vote to file, he said. God help both of us. She put the phone down. the Seoul sky outside beginning to thin from black toward gray. She thought about her father. She thought about 14 companies still paying. She thought about Han Jae-won's hand stopped in the air for 1 second, and what it cost a person to hold back from what they wanted when the wrong moment didn't allow it. She kept writing. At 5:30 a.m., she reviewed the full report line by line, found 2 sentences slightly too generous, rewrote them to neutral, found one too harsh, did the same. What remained was precisely what it needed to be. She saved it, all 4 devices, encrypted, time-stamped, 5:47 a.m. A knock. Han Jae-won in the doorway. The controlled layers thinned, not cracked, just lived in. He looked at the standalone device, the notebooks, the empty cups, the report on the screen. "You sent it," he said. "Filing it now," she said. He looked at the document, read the visible section. She didn't angle it away. Let him read. "You named the international connections," he said. "Want everything I could document," she said. "That brings attention on you specifically," he said. "I know," she said. He looked at her. The almost thing from the conference room was still there, not as acute, but present in the way things were present once they'd crossed a certain line. "My board is distancing from me," he said. "The members who paid Kwan voluntarily. They're making me the face of this." "I know," she said. "My company may not survive what you filed," he said. "You arranged this knowing that," she said. "Yes," he said. She pressed send. The report filed at 5:51 a.m. The room went quiet. The Seoul sky outside was the pale gray that came just before color arrived. "Jae-won," she said. He met her eyes. "I'm sorry for what this cost you," she said. The specific thing. The cost, not the report. He held her gaze. 4 seconds. In the gray pre-dawn light, his face was unguarded in a way it had only ever been on the rooftop. The architecture of control lowered, just the man underneath it. "Don't be," he said quietly. "This is what it's supposed to feel like." She didn't answer. There was an answer. Something true that would have changed the temperature of the room. And she didn't say it yet. Not at 5:51 a.m. in a building she was leaving in 90 minutes. She started packing her document case. He stayed in the doorway. Didn't offer to help. Just stayed, present in the same space for the time that remained. She noticed. She let it be what it was. She came down to the lobby at 7:15 a.m., one carry-on, document case in her left hand, dark blazer, uncrumpled. The same woman who had walked into this building 4 days ago, except entirely different inside. Park Seo-jin was waiting. He bowed. She thanked him and meant it. Choi Moon-ho was not in the lobby. She had expected this. She walked toward the glass doors. Ms. Okonkwo, Han Jae-won crossing the lobby, unhurried, always unhurried. But she knew how to read past the pace of him now. She knew what it looked like when he had decided something. He stopped a few feet from her, morning staff filling the lobby around them, the gray soul morning through the glass. He looked at her. She looked at him. "Safe flight," he said. She looked at him. The geometric tattoo, the sharp jaw, the dark brown eyes in the lobby light. In the man who had arranged his own exposure because he couldn't be quiet about what he'd found. The man whose hand had stopped 1 second from her arm in a conference room and had stayed, stopped because the time wasn't right. "Fix it," she said. "Not just the record, all of it." "I intend to," he said. "Your company might not survive what I filed," she said. "I know," he said. "You arranged this anyway," she said. "Yes," he said. Simply. She held his gaze. 4 seconds. 5. Something in the space between them. Not words, just the recognition of 2 people who had found each other at the center of a difficult truth and had both chosen the same direction. She took 1 step toward him, not 2. 1. Small enough to be nothing, large enough to be something. She put her hand on his forearm, briefly. She just the weight of it through the sleeve of his jacket. Then she took it back. 1 second. Maybe less. He didn't move. He looked at her with the full, unmanaged version of what had been in his face since the conference room. Not shock, not performed feeling, just the quiet, enormous thing itself, finally undefended. "Don't let it be for nothing," she said. "I won't," he said, quietly. She turned, walked through the glass doors. Seoul hit her, cold, clean, rain-washed. She got in the car. The driver pulled away from the curb. She watched the tower recede through the rear window. 62 floors of black glass returning the gray sky. Watched it until the first turn took it. She opened her document case, made the final notation. 721. Departed Hansung Tower. Report filed. Referral submitted. Certification status, unknown. Paused. And added, still worth it. Below that, in the margin, smaller. I touched his arm. He didn't move away. I don't know what to do with that yet. She closed the notebook, looked out the window. Seoul moved past. Enormous, layered, complicated, and in the early morning light, quietly breathtaking. She had been here 4 days and had never properly seen it. She saw it now. All of it. All the way to Incheon. 6 weeks later, Marcus Webb cast the deciding vote to file. Han Sung's legal team submitted the IFA complaint 2 days later. The certification review lasted 6 weeks. In those 6 weeks, Director Kwon Byung-soo's name appeared in the Korea Financial Times, then 7 other publications. Then the National Assembly's Ethics Subcommittee announced a formal inquiry. 5 of the 14 companies came forward. Combined documented payments, 5.3 billion won. The Interpol Financial Crimes Division opened a case file on the Cayman BVWAR Singapore shell structure. The London consultancy was identified. 2 of its Ministry of Infrastructure clients were named in the Interpol filing. The system was, as Jae-won had said, larger than one official. Hansung Holdings cooperated fully. 3 board members resigned. Han Jae-won did not resign. He testified before the National Assembly subcommittee for 4 hours. Korean financial media used one word about his testimony, repeatedly unflinching. The IFA Standards Board dismissed the complaint against Adaeze Okonkwo in full. The dismissal letter cited conduct representing the highest standard of professional independence in field audit practice. Creston Meridian offered her the senior partnership. She said she would think about it. She was still thinking about it on a Thursday evening in her Bermondsey flat. 6th floor, London, hers in all the ways that mattered. Working on a Frankfurt holding company whose accounts were already, in the first 2 hours, too clean to trust. Her phone buzzed. Seoul country code, +82, a number she didn't have saved. 1 message, 2 words. Well done. She set her pen down. She stood at the kitchen counter. London outside doing what London did. Gray, reliable, incapable of the specific quality of cold that a Seoul rooftop at 9 p.m. carried. She picked up the phone, read the 2 words again. She thought about a rooftop in a city spread below, and a man who had arranged his own exposure because he couldn't be quiet about what he'd found. She thought about the almost touch in the conference room, his hands stopping in the air for 1 second. She thought about a lobby at 7:15 a.m., and the 1 step she had taken and the weight of her hand on his forearm through a sleeve. She thought about what she'd written in the margin of her notebook on the ride to Incheon. I don't know what to do with that yet. She typed 4 words, pressed send before she could revise them. Seoul looks good in rain. Put the phone face down on the counter. Went back to Frankfurt. The 2 clean accounts. 40 seconds later it buzzed. She gave it 20 seconds, picked it up. Come back and see it properly. I'll be here. She stood in her kitchen in London with the phone in her hand and let herself feel, fully without filing it, what it felt like to read those 8 words. The beginning of something, not the middle, not the resolution. The very first note of something that didn't yet have a name and didn't need one yet. She set the phone down, face up this time, picked up her pen, wrote in the margin of the Frankfurt file, 3 words, unhurried and certain. Maybe I will. Outside, London went about its evening. Somewhere, Seoul was doing the same. The Han River wide and dark. Sun Hansung Tower lit against the Gangnam skyline. 62 floors of black glass standing like a declaration that was, for the first time in 6 years, honest. On the 38th floor, the temporary office had been cleared. The desk was empty, the credenza bare, except for the white ceramic vase. The orchids were gone, but someone had turned them to face inward before they were removed. Nobody asked who. If this story held you, if you felt every moment of that rooftop, that conference room, that 1 second his hand stopped in the air, Then you already know what kind of storytelling lives on this channel. Subscribe to Crimson Hand Stories.